Hey, Star Wars fans, Jimmy Mack here with you, and welcome to this special edition of the RFR Acolyte season finale, first review. And you knew the show was going to be on vacation this week. Well, half the show is on vacation this week. I'll put it to you that way. And Jason's not here with us. He might pop in at some point. I don't know. I hope he does. But the Acolyte season finale just aired. We are recording this within an hour of the show dropping. So I think that's pretty cool. We're coming in with no notes, no real thought out theories. We're going to be dealing with a lot of first blush reactions. And because Jason couldn't be here, joining me is our friend, FJ DeSanto. FJ. Oh, okay. He's just kind of posing now.
What's up?
Okay.
Yeah.
This is predominantly an audio. So we maybe it's
okay, good. Okay, good.
I don't. It sounds like the Millennium Falcon is landing in the background.
I know, that's the story of my life.
So the show just aired, and I figured you're the first person I'm talking to with a real reaction. And
same.
I mean, what are your thoughts on the series overall going into the finale? And do you think they stuck the landing? Do you think they gave us a satisfying and fulfilling conclusion to the season?
The answer is yeah. The question is, where was this show in half the previous 7? Because I thought this was great. I thought this was what was in my head, what the show was going to be. This was the only episode that sort of encapsulated that. And it sort of weirdly made me not like the season as much, because it seemed to be building to something that was infinitely cooler than I expected, but took such a wonky way to get there. I think, look, to just my biggest problem with the season are the 2 flashback episodes, which I think are just extremely poorly executed. But subsequently, in the hands of a different director like Hanalei Culpepper, who did this one, who I've been fortunate enough to work with before. Yeah, which I got to email her. I felt like they set up all the. I was convinced they weren't going to be able to sort of tie up all the loose threads with this, and I thought they did a really good job. And I thought I give them a lot of credit for they went there with this. They got pretty effing wild with it. And I mean, you're killing a lot of characters. This show had this episode in particular had some balls to it and set up a lot of stuff. And what I did like about it was it felt like a satisfying conclusion, at least to May's arc in particular. But also, I have no idea if they're going to get a second season or not. So it's either, sets up a completely different show, which is really interesting because you've got so many different things. You got I'm assuming it's Plagueis, cameo.
Oh yeah. I think there's no doubt. There's no doubt that was Darth Plagueis.
Yeah, that was absolutely wild. Now you've got
huge tie-in.
Venestra, is that her name? The green Jedi woman?
Yeah.
Venestra as completely, that was the real moment of the downfall of the Jedi. Is that moment. Is when she's lying about Saul and all that shit. But yeah, there's I thought this was easily the best of the 8 episodes. It had, again, some really good lightsaber fights, some good melodrama.
Yeah.
I wish this had been the halfway point of an 8-episode season, because I just think, in retrospect, there's a real inconsistency in the directing and execution of the episodes. And again, this is all sort of knee-jerky.
That's what the show's all about, really. This particular.
Yeah, but I felt like like every time the show seems to find its footing, it wobbles. Like, hey, we've got those episodes 5, the lightsaber fight and all that stuff, and the bad guy and the stranger, all that shit. And then it sort of gets wonky again. And look, I've got a lot of issues with the series. I certainly don't hate it, and I give them credit for trying something new with it. Um, I just thought, weirdly, this episode was more tonally akin to Andor, in terms of the galactic politics and the darker side of those things, the underbelly of it, and all that stuff. And I thought
Yeah.
that was super fascinating. And if they do get a second season, I hope it continues in that trend. But also, you know, it felt a little bit like it was a very satisfying episode, but I would have loved for that to be the fourth episode and then see where it all goes, because there are certain things left hanging, like the stranger is clearly her pupil, which she gives up at the end. Um, like they sort of teed up the whole Senate oversight of the Jedi in one episode, but I think there could have been more to that sort of pressured her into making the story up and lying and stuff like that. I think in the end, the whole Rashomon approach to it and how they sort of dole out information is wonky and reminds me a little bit of the same issues I had with Boba Fett, which was just like, just tell it linearly. You know
No,
what I
they
mean?
don't
Just
do
like,
that anymore.
no, just like, because they want to keep people engaged.
Andor's the lone exception because, well, I guess Mandalorian is telling things in order with little flashbacks to his past and where he came from, but they don't dwell on that stuff so much. They keep it.
Yeah, but they don't have like full
largely in the
episodes of
present.
that. They don't have like full episodes of that.
Right.
So it's
Right.
like, so it's weird. Like, we had the whole flashback episode last week, and then we pick up with the stranger and her in the helmet and all that stuff. It's like, oh yeah, I forgot all about that. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it should have, when she puts the helmet on, it should have had the moment where his eyes go black and all that stuff. And I still think there's a lot of unanswered questions about, May Osha's sort of powers. That we get the idea that they were created by the Force. We still don't have clarity if they are the virgins that they're talking about, which, I think there's still some clunky stuff in it that obviously I feel like they left open for a second season.
Yeah, for sure.
Who knows if they're going to get it? But of course, then there'll be books and comics and all that stuff.
That's what I'm thinking. That some of this stuff can be told in publishing or in other little spin-offs or something, or even like animated shows. You can tell backstory about young Chimere and Vern. I call her Vernestra Rowe, and how they had the falling out and things like that. That is, I'm saying, if a second season doesn't get cleared. But in the meantime, we can assume that a lot of these mysteries will be revealed in upcoming seasons should they get the green light. And I think that's the plan before we even talk about publishing or animation or anything. At least I hope so, because that was real frustrating with the sequel trilogy, where you had to resort to novels and comic books to get the full story. And I don't think that works. I don't think that works with feature films. I don't think fans should have to do that kind of homework. So I think the best case scenario here is to get a second season of The Acolyte. And but I just don't know. I don't know if the viewer numbers are there.
I don't know. I don't, to be honest, I don't think the viewer numbers are enough. From
Justify
just from
$180 million budget.
Yeah,
the viewer
which
numbers aren't there.
is insane to me. But
yeah, I know.
This episode in particular looked like its budget in a good way. Was it you who was texting on the group chat about like, hey, the ILM guys are posting about this, really proud of it, and then they have that whole sort of spaceship chase scene.
That was
the
was
rings
really
of the planet, and that's really good. And like, it's like, okay, I can see why they're excited about that. Like, there's some good stuff in that. Like the cinematography, like it's just weird to me. Like, they should have just let Hanalei Culpepper direct everything, because when she does these episodes, and I think she did like 2 or 3, they're the more cinematic episodes. They're the more like this episode, like, whereas the flashback episodes in particular are done by a South Korean director who's not done a lot of narrative television. So I think it's a very odd choice to have put the responsibility of those key episodes on him or her. I don't know. And like, because to me, this episode, I felt like I was watching the third act of a movie. And I thought the performances were better. I thought the actors were better. I thought the young woman who plays May and Osha, I thought it was a noticeable different than the other episodes, where I thought she was actually. I felt they were two different characters in this, as opposed to an actor just doing the back and forth. And then you sit there and think about it, like, she's bonded to the stranger because they've both been screwed over by the Jedi. Like, there's something very potentially fun about that and the adventures they could go on. And I was, last time I was on the show, my big issue was, when are we going to get to see the Jedi in like a fun adventure kind of thing? We talked about that with Swank, and but the funny thing is, like, by the time this was over, I was like, oh, now I'm interested in where this goes. You know what I mean? Like, I'm interested in his backstory with the Jedi, and Darth Plagueis is there. But again, I also feel like you could have done this in half the time and got into this stuff and Yoda and all this crap later on in a first season for what they're paying for that show. And but ultimately, I thought this was the strongest of all the episodes. So it ends strong. It ends with good questions and thoughts, etc. I do like it has little ties into the prequels. Like I was watching this with my wife, who was sort of like, I was like, oh, that's Plagueis. And, it's sort of like, well, okay, if there's the rule of two, now you got these two kids. Was he looking for her to take down Plagueis together, and then she's his acolyte or whatever, or because that's the name of the show. And the question is, we know somebody ain't gonna live because he ends up training Palpatine, Plagueis, right? So you know what I mean? So like there's potential intrigue with that stuff and all that. It just, this was the first episode that felt really like, okay, I'm in the Star Wars universe.
I absolutely, I know. I think that the show suffered from having repetitive environments. For example, the planet Kofar, there were plains and then a very wooded area, and the action happened in both places. Same thing with the planet Brendok. So I just felt like they were repeating a lot of these environments. There was nothing really exotic about any of them.
Right.
That's where the show lets me down, and where I don't feel the Star Wars vibe I want to, is because the environments lack creativity. It's the same thing, especially when it repeats throughout the course of an 8-episode series.
But and they sort of bounce around to the same places over and over again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I liked the jumping around, and we saw a lot of that in this episode, where there were cutaways to action on Coruscant, and then back aboard the ship, and then back on Brendok. And so that's the sort of vibe. That's a tone that Star Wars always has had, where multiple storylines were being told simultaneously. And we weren't getting that with a majority of the Acolyte. This episode, I think, really had the right feel, the right vibe. Hey, it looks like Swank is checking in from vacation. It looks like he's in a very dark room.
Look at well, I'm actually outside.
He's in the cave. He's in the cave with Plagueis. He's just sort of hiding in the little cave.
Yeah.
Is that who that was? Was that Plagueis?
Yeah, that was definitely Plagueis.
Yeah. Definitely Plagueis. Okay, I wasn't sure if we were looking at Tenebrous or Plagueis. It was very dark. I went back and looked at the video. I mean, I'll say I did a fist pump when I saw that character. So, but that was about the high for me in this episode.
Oh, really?
Some good saber stuff. Definitely some great saber stuff. But Man, I gotta say, just looking back on this is just one big depressing show.
How so?
There was nothing that really was uplifting or hopeful about it at all for me.
I get that. I get it. I get it because the Jedi as heroes are really being put into question. And
Right.
as fans of the franchise that has always presented these characters, in triumphant moments where they seemed like they were always morally doing the right thing, this show really puts the focus into whether or not they are doing the right thing. And I think that sits uncomfortably for a lot of fans. What do you think, FJ?
No, I sort of agree with what Jason's saying, and it ties into what I was saying, Jason, just before you hopped on. But then also something the three of us talked about in the last time was, it's like we never get to see the Jedi just be fun, swashbuckling guys. The difference, Jason, here's the part you missed. I thought this was a great episode, and the only like truly good episode of the show that felt like genuine Star Wars. And to me, even the shot, like, it's so Empire Strikes Back, right? Like, to me, like, and by the way, they're probably not going to get a second season out of it, but like, to me, it just set up all this dark thing that, like, hey, a hero of some kind does need to emerge in the second season, right? And if you're going to do it, I don't know who the hell that is, because even, we spend how many episodes thinking Saul is the heart and soul of the Jedi, and he made one mistake, and it's, tortured him forever.
And then he gets settled. He gets settled with the whole rap of the
which
is controversy.
And I think that, like, to me, this episode was more akin to Andor. This is what I was saying. Like, it had the politics and it had the sort of back dealing and underbelly of the galaxy and all that stuff. But I think it also weirdly, again, sorry for the listeners because I'm repeating some of this to get Jason up to speed, is this would have been great if it was the fourth episode, right? Like, if you'd condensed all that and it was the fourth episode, and then it was like, okay, no, like, you have these two kids now on this island who have both been burned by the Jedi in some way, shape, or form. Like, how do they find that redemption? And I really thought at one point, I thought what I respected about this episode is that they had the balls to go in a lot of places, killing Saul, etc., without really any repercussions and things like that. Like, I was convinced May was going to tell Osha to stop at a certain point, because that whole bit before, she's like, he's going to stand trial, he's going to blah, 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 blah. But she don't stop the sister. And then there's the weird thing of, if they're the same person, could she really stop her anyway, kind of thing. And, like, there's some weird shit that still needs to be explained with it, which, again, we're probably not going to get. But I thought, like, there's even that, by the way, there's even that one shot of the two girls escaping their home, before they go out into the world. That's literally a shot from Empire Strikes Back of Luke and Cloud City when they're in that little round tunnel and the lights are emerging.
Oh, yeah.
It's literally Empire Strikes Back.
Oh, wow.
And so I think they were trying to set a tone of that sort of quote unquote hopelessness of the end of the Empire Strikes Back, which is like, we have our backs against the wall kind of thing. The problem, and again, this is a really good point Jason brings up, is who's the hero?
Right.
Are these kids the hero? Because now they're, like, and maybe there's a whole story to be told of them breaking free of Plagius, because, we know, here's the thing. I know when I get to the prequels, Plagius trained Palpatine, so clearly he lived, because Palpatine ain't 100 years old, right? And something had to happen to these kids, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's an interesting story to tell, where, like, maybe they did it because they want to break free and all that stuff, and their intentions are noble, and maybe they're the heroes of the piece, just from a different POV.
Maybe the hero is Yoda. I mean, Yoda is on screen for about 6 seconds, but is Yoda the new hope here for this corrupt and less than heroic faction of the Jedi Council, this sub council that they have going on, or this security council? I mean, and there's not much there, but what I can only assume is that Vernestra goes to Yoda. She says, "We need to talk." Like, she it's implied that she's going to give him the full story. She's not going to give him the cover story.
Right.
Yoda emerges from this knowing that what exactly went down.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, but what are the repercussions of that? You know what I mean? Like, it wouldn't Yoda, he should be like, hey, you're an asshole for doing that. Like, I understand you're trying to cover us because we don't want the Senate oversight. And that was a cool cameo from that actor.
That was the best. I just want to say that was the best moment for me of the entire series. As you said, FJ, it gave me Andor vibes. The little monologue that the senator gives, I thought was some of the best writing that the show has had.
Yeah,
very strong.
Again, if he showed up 4 episodes earlier, because you have a different senator sort of yelling at her in the hologram that our friend Mr. Collins did the voice for, and subsequently, like,
he's referred to. I think they refer to this guy.
Yeah, they refer to that guy in the thing, but like, it would have made more sense if you had sort of. And this is a problem I have with the whole show, and then I have a question for you, because maybe I'm just stupid, but I'll ask that in a second. And that sort of summarizes a lot of my problems with the show. Is like, it drops and picks up a lot of things in the wrong places, and subsequently, when you sort of look back, especially at the first half of the season, there's a lot of fat you could trim off the show. Because I thought what I liked about the first half of the season initially was the Shaw Brothers style, like, murder the Jedi of the week kind of thing.
Yeah. And
then it sort of dovetails into the Stranger and the Wookiee Jedi. But I still think those flashback episodes derail the narrative momentum of the show. And I would rather if it had been one giant flashback in the beginning to launch the show, or something much earlier on. So you're asking more questions, like, where did those guys all go? Because I mean, there's something more interesting if you really take a step back. I don't remember the name of the Wookiee Jedi, but it would have been more interesting if you had seen him do all that crazy shit where he's possessed and fighting the other Jedi in the beginning. You know what I mean? Or earlier in the season. Maybe like that first flashback episode could have been the whole thing versus, et cetera. It's clunky how it's all laid out. So here's my only weird question, which I must have missed something. So again, apologize to the listeners. This is literally 5 minutes after we've all watched it. Why did the little tracker guy fuck up the ship?
That's what I was wondering. I was going to ask you that.
What was he doing?
Why did he do that? Why did he do that?
Basil has been a mystery throughout these last couple of episodes. Yeah. His motivation, what he's trying to do. The only thought I had was, was he trying to get them safely crashed onto Brendock? Like, did he realize that the best bet was for him to knock Saul, his controls out, so then he would bump May's ship, which would then, I don't know, it was a very safe landing that she had as well. But, the physics of Star Wars, it's hard. I recognize
Star Wars is, Star Wars is, there's the physics of Star Wars, which you're dead right about. Yeah. And then there's just confusion. And there's been a number of instances of that through the show that I have a feeling, everybody thinks, oh, it's bad writing. It's bad writing. I actually think some of it's probably written well and just executed thinking we know what you're trying to attempt here. Because like no one's sitting there going, why is this little douchebag doing this? Like, why is he doing like I that's the only thing I was baffled about the entire
time. It's almost like they're establishing some sort of mystery around this little character who I do admit maybe a week or two ago I was saying that he could be the potential Sith Lord himself.
That'd be funny. No.
But
the only other disappointing thing in the episode for me, because like I said, I thought it was the strongest and the best of the episode, and I'd probably give the show like a 6 out of 10, right? I think that's fair. I probably would have gone lower if this episode wasn't as good as it was and set up interesting things. Yeah, I'll give it like 6.5.
A lot was depending on it. I prefer just to give it an overall kind of a thumbs up, you know. I mean,
yeah, like I give it like a 3/4 thumbs up, you know, like
yeah.
closer to the middle kind of thing, because weirdly, you know, I knew we were going to be on, and knew I was talking about it. I was sort of reviewing, you know, like what's come before and all that stuff, and I was like, I kept saying, I said this earlier in the episode, I said, you know, I don't know how they're going to tie all this shit up and set up something or whatever, and I thought this episode really succeeded in that. So it's weird, like it almost feels like they had the ending figured out and sort of worked backwards. You know what I mean? Like we have these compelling characters.
Felt very much that way to me. Actually, I agree.
All this stuff, and it just sort of, you know, like
they had a really good last episode in mind, and like you say, and then they work backwards on it.
It's going to be the same excuse I give Star Wars every time we're on it, which is like the intention is good, the execution is always the problem. So like if you sat there and you were like, okay, well, we're going to do this episode, it's like they're trying to track this kid who may have killed some Jedi. Okay, that's interesting, right? That's your sort of first couple episodes. Then we're going to have this flashback of the origin of these twin sisters. Okay, that's cool. And then the midpoint of the show is we're going to reveal this Sith in this helmet doing crazy cool shit, and he kills a bunch of Jedi, including characters we're invested in halfway into it. Also really good. And the big twist is the good twin is going to join the Sith guy. Right? It's like, oh, these are great core tenets of Star Wars. That's why when people are like, oh, she doesn't understand Star Wars, but no, you've got the core tenets of Star Wars in there. But then it's like, you know, and there's something to be said where I just think in this case in particular, some of the directing, I'm going to pin it more on the directors than I'm going to pin it on the writing, if that makes sense. Like I do think that, like I do feel like, you know, and I don't like to talk shit about filmmakers and stuff like that. Like I feel bad about it. But I just think the quality of the directing in this episode is so miles ahead of, you know, some of the stuff that came before it.
Tell us about Holly Culpepper. Tell us about her. What is
she? So I met her on a show that we didn't get going during COVID. Yeah. So she's really smart woman. She's done big shows like Game of Thrones and stuff like. Well, I'm sorry, not Game of Thrones, Westworld, stuff like that. She's super smart, and you can see she's got a cinematic quality to this episode. And also very wisely, and if you I don't know if you watched Westworld, it also juggled a lot of what Jason was talking about, which is the multiple sort of subplots and plot lines of different characters in different locations. And you know, and again, you know, I didn't think of it till Jason really brought it up. That's a really good point about how this episode, you know, especially in the sort of second half or towards the end, goes into all these different directions and follows all, you know, what happens to all these different people. And that to me is like a perfect Star Wars ending. You know, like every Star Wars, here's where the bad guys are, here's where the good guys are, here's, you know, the end. And we're going to pick up with them sometime later. So I think she's a really strong director. Like she's done really, really good stuff, high quality stuff. She's a veteran TV director, but knows how to handle those big budget shows. And I thought she did a tremendous job with this one in particular. Because to me, this episode sort of, you know, like I'd be much more down on the series had it not ended as intriguingly as it did. I'm not saying it ended great or like, oh my God, it saved the show. But what the episode did for me was sort of set up like, oh, I'm interested in where this goes. Like the Yoda thing and what happens to May now that her brain is erased, you know, which I thought was really fascinating because we've never really seen that other than with droids. But then also, listen, you have fucking Darth Plagueis in a cave, like that's crazy, right? And it's like,
I think Darth Plagueis. I feel like Darth Plagueis should have been revealed somewhere around episode 3.
Like, I'm telling you, no, because what you could have done was everything earlier, right? To your point, but they did a really good job of setting up the stranger in the first X amount of episodes. It was so blatant. It was this kid that in reality, you probably didn't need to do that, right? You could have just been straight up like in an episode where he just takes off the helmet. And it's like, yeah, it's me, and then blah blah blah. Like no one sat there and went, what? It's him. But however, when you see, a friggin' Sith Lord in a cave, everybody right now on my Twitter feed is shitting their pants. You know what I mean? Like, and on your Facebook group, right? So to Jason's point, had that been in the 4th episode, and then you had that thing where the 2 kids are just standing at the water at the end, which is a great shot. It's a classic Star Wars shot. And then you have him walk behind them and say something like, it's time. You know what I mean? Like, boom, the fuck?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It would have been mind-blowing. It would have been mind-blowing. Yeah. I want to go back real quick, if I could, to the scene between Vernestra and the Senator. I was definitely getting X-Men vibes, the idea of what do we do with mutants. I was getting, even The Incredibles. One of the things I loved about The Incredibles movie from Pixar was that it dealt with this issue. What do normal people do with these superheroes?
Yeah.
And
The Boys does that as well.
So that can be a really, really interesting thing to tackle. And if done the right way, why shouldn't Star Wars tackle that? I mean, from the very earliest Star Wars, you can sense that there's a prejudice that Owen has about the old wizard Ben Kenobi.
Right.
And so I was, even at that, when I saw that for the first time, I thought, it's interesting. People aren't too keen on these Jedi. So there was always a little bit of a stink, in some ways on the Jedi. Han Solo, great example. Yeah.
Simple tricks and nonsense.
But but Jason, to your point, which I think is an excellent point. The thing, and this is again going to sound like I'm talking shit about the show, is by the time you get to the X-Men stuff and the Boys, which are both excellent examples, and the Boys is a show I religiously watch and enjoy. We've seen enough superhero movies where we've had context for what X-Men and the Boys, etc. do. Like the parody is in particular the Boys, the parody, the grounded realism of X-Men, especially the Chris Claremont era of the comics, etc., which they do touch on in the original Singer movies. My issue is, give me, if you're going to do this thing with the Senate wanting to control the Jedi, which by the way ties directly into the prequel, so there's clearly 100-year sort of debate over this, which is cool, right? I would have, again, going back to what I keep pitching, which is I would love to have seen a more swashbuckling opening. Like, let me give you the perfect Jedi swashbuckling opening is Revenge of the Sith. The whole Palpatine rescue, Grievous,
yes,
all that stuff. Like, that's like I want a show of that. And it doesn't necessarily have to be Obi-Wan and Anakin. Like if you had done a thing where oh, the Jedi are on this cool adventure, they crash land on this planet and they meet these witches, right? Which is like a classic sort of Star Trek trope, but then something's up with these witches and these kids here, as opposed to the Jedi are out looking for kids. Like, you already made them assholes, right? Like, the gray area is more interesting if you'd start and made them more swashbuckling. But then also you have the Senate going like, y'all are crashing ships on planets and blah, 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 blah. Like, you need to be kept in check. Like, you guys are having way too much leeway with these powers. And also, to Jason's point about the X-Men comparison is like, and it doesn't really come up enough. It's like, these are supernaturally powered people and aliens who can do crazy shit. And he sort of references it as a religion, but not as like, are they technically like mutants, the superior species, right? Like where, and again, I'd prefer not to see that, right? I'd prefer the more swashbuckling thing and like everybody's cheering for them. Like, I want one show of that. So when you do this kind of thing, like, it's like, well, here's the context for this. Like, Anakin Obi-Wan crash a giant ship into the ground with the Chancellor in it. You know what I mean? Like, well, that was the only way to save him. Right. All that kind of thing. But by the time we get to Revenge of the Sith, the Jedi are at their lowest. They're ripe for the picking at that point. Mm-hmm. And I'd love to think that Palpatine's completing Plagius. I don't.
Plagius.
Okay, I'll get to it. But his boss's original plan, like, does that plan start here with these kids? You know what I mean? Like, so, like, what's the stranger's story? Like, okay, I've got these whip marks on my back, and by the way, we only saw that fucking whip once, which was bullshit.
Yeah,
that was my other big complaint of this episode.
Where was that
is
whip?
When all those Jedi show up on the planet, I was like, he's gonna wipe them the fuck out, right? And then he didn't. But like, I also think that it would diminish Saul's death, which we haven't really talked about. Like ultimately, like, he's super tragic character. Like, he's super fucking tragic.
What was with him telling Osha that it was okay? Kill me. It's okay.
Well, you see, and again, this goes into the execution. Is okay when he kills the mom, and she's doing the spell, and you see May is starting to dissolve. Is she killing those kids? Like, has the mom reached the point of, I'd rather kill these kids than let them go with the Jedi, right? Because shit's just hit the fan now, right? Like, the kid's dissolving, right? You got to go back and watch it. Like, May is sitting there starting to come apart, like the snap in the Avengers, and the mom is too. And that's why I thought Saul stabs her to save the kid, right? Now, again, I guarantee you that's probably what it says in the script. But we're sitting here, the three of us who have watched these things religiously, talk all day about it, don't have the answer to it, right? That's
don't really know. I mean, I'll be honest. I assumed when I saw that scene was that she was just trying to escape, and that she was using her power to help the girl escape as well.
That's what I believe too.
And by the way, it could be that. It could be that. Yeah, it could be that too. Like, I'm taking the kids away and all that shit. And he's like, no, but like, you know, there's a more interesting gray area. If Saul, instead of sitting there going, hey, it's okay, you know, I killed her, but it's okay. So she was going to kill you, or you were going to go away. Like, you're not, you know, a real person. You're weird virgins in the Force kind of thing. Like there's almost like a weird madness to him. And kudos to the actor, because he starts off as basically like this era's Qui-Gon. By the time it's over, he's Kylo Ren. You know, like, his brain is scrambled. He's not violent, but he's just like,
he's messed up.
You see him. It's actually deceptively good, his sort of mental breakdown across 8 episodes. And you know, because you know what the best line in the entire thing is, in the entire show, is when the stranger kills Jackie, right? And Saul goes, she was a child. You brought her here. We talked about this on the last show. Right. That's crazy. Like, that's really interesting and clever. And now these are more young people who are being threatened by that. You know what I mean? Like, and again, it goes back to me wanting, like, I want to see younglings kick ass and become Jedi and be good and fight. And there's room for that kind of show. There's also room for this kind of thing. Like, and that's why I sort of like what, you know, I keep referring to the dark underbelly of Star Wars, and that's sort of what we're getting here. But again, I think from a directing point of view, some of these things could have been more clearly stated. Like, I have a feeling sometimes people think like, oh, it's going to be so on the nose. Audiences think they're going to be pandered to. It's like, no, sometimes you got to give it on the nose, because if we're sitting here and we all have a different, well, you two have the same thought about what the mom was doing. I didn't know if the mom was just like, you know, if she created those kids out of the Force, can she just send them back to the Force or some shit? Oh, you know what I mean? Like, or was she trying to escape with them? And Saul did that. Like, he could say that, you know what I mean? Like, that's the problem. It's like, so then it's weird of, you know, and I always thought it's really creepy that it's like, well, that's why you don't have your own Padawan. Like, what's up with this guy? Right? Like, in the end, like,
he's impulsive. You know, but I think one of the things that is a real virtue of the show is it does leave things open to interpretation. And that only gets damaged when, like, some of the creatives go out on the interview circuit. And Leslie Headland does win the RFR 2024 STFU and Make Star Wars Award. I'm already giving it out, and the year's only halfway over. Leslie won it. But still, I don't
know. Wait, you still haven't had Kyle on, so, you know, let's just
Well, Kyle doesn't make
hold that award. No, I'm only kidding.
No, Kyle doesn't make Star Wars, so so he does not apply. And gosh, I wish I could be in a position to give him that award, because I would love to see people like Kyle and you, who really think about Star Wars and who have lived with it for a long time.
It's never going to happen
to establish your authority and integrity on the franchise. And I know it won't happen, but it just makes me drive my head into the wall that they're bringing in people who are known for making good YouTube documentaries or Pakistani documentaries about women being abused. Those are your choices to make quality Star Wars when you're not answering Kyle and FJ's phone calls. Well, Kyle's phone calls. And you're also
I don't have the number.
Like Guillermo del Toro home. You're sending Guillermo del Toro home?
Yeah. Look, it's not for me to say, but I also think, by the way, this should have been a show that came out 3 or 4 years ago. And, I think it, unfortunately now, and a lot of Star Wars is going to go through this, we're now at a point where the tide has shifted and there's a negative perception from fandom of new Star Wars, especially in TV. And it's interesting because we haven't talked about Skeleton Crew yet, all that stuff. We don't know shit about Skeleton Crew. But, and then Andor, which I'm optimistic about, of course. I just feel like there's sort of now a damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of thing with Star Wars that I have a personal fear of that taints every project. And as everybody knows, we have our little Jedi Council group chat that rages on daily, and I'm the one always asking the questions, because it's just like it goes into extreme panic mode of the world of Star Wars, and I get it. And I'm just going to say some of that panic comes from somebody who's not on this video chat right now. And we got to keep him in line. I worry for his sanity and all that stuff. But it's like
Kyle will get his day.
He's going to get in. I'm sure he'll get his 4 hour special.
Yeah, it's going to happen.
At this point, you two just mute yourselves and let him do his thing.
Hey, like we don't already.
Somebody said to me, somebody said to me, how come you and Kyle aren't on the show anymore? Like, are you guys cool? I said, yeah, we're always cool. It said, first of all, like, if I'm on, he's just going to talk, so there's no point. And it's just going to be this, constant, like, trying to get a word in over each other. And plus, maybe they do better ratings where it's not individual.
Well, I don't know. I'm already thinking of a sort of presidential style debate that we will moderate and host.
But see, here's the
very controlled. We'll turn off Kyle's microphone when you're answering.
Oh no, but I'll be the Biden falling asleep. But the problem is there's no debate. Like, you see, the thing is, where I'm like, like Kyle be like, the word is this. Someone blah 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 said this, and I'm like, and it's like somebody with like 45 followers. Who's like, handle is at FU Disney, like, it's just like, of course they're gonna, what I mean? Like, all that shit, like, what's the real balance? Well, the real balance is people didn't watch it, right? Enough people aren't watching it for it to crack certain things. So there's clearly a brand perception problem, like, and again, this is grounded in realism. Like, like, I'm not necessarily, when I debate Kyle over these things, I'm actually not arguing what he's saying. What I'm debating is the extremism of it and the insanity and trying to keep him, like, worry about your kids and, like, all that shit. But he's also, by the way, in a lot of ways, not wrong, right? It's just the I'm worried about the blood vessel in his head exploding, like that kind of thing. And so, like, I'm sorry, you're gonna say something, Jim?
Well, I mean, Kyle's not here, so I don't want to keep putting words in his mouth.
No, I just love busting his balls. Like, I know he'll hear this.
But you're the prophet, and I mean, we have to determine if you're a prophet or loser. And I'm sorry, I've been shuffling through my notes for a while now. I can't find the predictions.
I have the notes. They're at my house. We're gonna have to.
We'll do another one. We'll do. But I do think, I think I got some things right with this one. I think I did all right with this one.
My
would think
Prophet
that.
to Loser, it's not very good, I think. You know, I was saying Basil is the Sith Lord. I was just getting pretty wacky out there, but he can't possibly be because we saw Darth Plagueis. It's Plagueis. I think you say Plagueis, and I think I corrected you by saying Plagueis, but it's actually Plagueis. It's Plagueis.
I'll go with whatever, you know, as I, you know, and that's the thing. I always defer to you guys with that stuff. Like,
Well, no, just all you have to do is watch Revenge of the
I
Sith.
listened.
Yeah, I know, but I don't.
Plagueis the ways.
Yeah. Oh, it's great, and like, and I love that shit when it ties into things we already know and stuff like that. Like, and that's why in the end, the show gets that like sort of like a little more than halfway thumbs up, and in that they tied in a bunch of cool stuff, and I thought it certainly ended much stronger than it started. Like, I'm definitely interested in those characters and where they go. The question is it too little, too late for it to continue on?
I thought I heard Ian McDiarmid's voice at one point in this episode when Vernestra Rowe was communicating with someone on a tabletop communications device. And I don't recall exactly. Do you know what I'm talking about, guys?
I do know what you're talking about, but it didn't ring to me as Ian McDiarmid. I don't know how they would even begin to retcon that unless
right.
Nubians are very long-lived. To me, I'll say I'm going to just go back to Stahl telling Osha that it was okay for her to take his life. That was when the show sort of crossed a line for me that I'm really struggling with. Because what I was enjoying about Stahl up to that moment was that he was saying that he did a bad thing, but he did it for the right reason. And here's the other thing, kind of what you were saying, FJ, about different interpretations. If we put ourselves in Saul's position, he saw this witch turn into smoke. He didn't know what the hell was happening.
Right.
And he was just like, holy crap, I don't know. And he just shoved his saber in there. I'm not saying it was accidental. It was definitely done with a deliberate reason. But, I almost think that it was chaotic in that moment. And I would have liked to see if they were going to set him up to be a murderer to the degree that the show sort of implies that he is, that murder have been a little bit more concrete or deliberate. It was with the smoke and all of that.
Well, that's what I don't get. Like, I don't get an idea of where his panic is and all that stuff. Like, if there's a thing of like, where are you going? Oh, she's escaping. Like that's what I'm talking about. Like, sometimes you need a little bit of the on the nose stuff to steer the audience a little bit,
right?
Because I agree with you entirely, Jason, on that.
Yeah,
I do.
Yeah. So, predictions on a season 2 happening? FJ, you don't think so? And Jason,
I honestly think it's 50-50. I just think where the business is in particular, where Lucasfilm is in particular, and the financial investment and that kind of thing to do a second season it's not exactly a show that's probably, it doesn't have Baby Yoda where it's going to spurn billions in merchandise.
You're right
about stuff like that, and I don't know if the casual fan cares anymore about new things.
I'm glad you brought up the casual fans. I just wanted to say that there are 2 Disney Star Wars shows that I don't have the ammunition. I don't have what it takes to convince a more casual Star Wars fan to watch, and that's The Acolyte and Ahsoka. Every other show, I can give them some sort of reason to, check it out and watch it. But those 2 shows, I can't justify it.
I easily can with The Acolyte, because with The Acolyte, you don't need to come in and pay a large admission fee for like decades of fandom. Any person can sit down and watch The Acolyte.
Well, why should they?
Well,
why I get both your points. You're both right.
Why should you sit down and watch anything?
I think
well,
ultimately
you're sitting down to watch part of a saga, and I don't think that it necessarily contributes to the saga in any.
It stands alone, though. It stands alone. It doesn't require you.
I think that's one of the positives of the show.
Yeah, I do
go
too.
into a cold and not like Ahsoka, like I can't imagine anybody who like what the fuck's going on. Like even I'm like
Ahsoka's impossible.
asking you guys what's going on, who these characters
Yeah.
are in Ahsoka, and things like that. And again, always Ahsoka I think is underwritten and executed in a sort of way too loose of a way. And like I said a million times on this show, that is 4 episodes stretched into 8. This show, I think, is 8 episodes worth of content. I just wish they would have laid it out differently in a more compelling way, that would have built to that payoff of this episode even
Getting
more.
back to Jim's question about a second season, I'd like to see it, but I'd like to see it given to a whole new set of hands.
No, I even needs a second season. That's the question. Does it need a second season?
Yeah, to justify the time it took out of my life for the last how many weeks.
Be quiet, you. What are we
No,
talking about?
No, I can see
that. It's absolutely true.
That's
no,
ridiculous.
no. It's not ridiculous.
Swank is still on vacation right now.
No, the show. I'm sorry. It's not ridiculous. The show wasted our time collectively as a fandom. It was a waste of fandom energy and effort because at the end of the day, it contributed 0.
All right, that I disagree with.
Yeah, I disagree.
I do agree with Swank in that it does justify a second season to justify the investment you put into these characters for 8 weeks. I do agree with that. I don't think it's for naught because I think it did tell a compelling story about flawed Jedi and interesting new Sith but again, I think it did a great job in this episode of setting a better table than a better meal than what we were served in this first season. So there is, again, sort of the less angry version of what Jason was saying was like, yeah, I'd be pissed if there's no second season because I just spent time, investing in these characters and I'm interested where it goes. And now if you don't get a second season, you wasted my time with it. And then you're just going to sit there forever and go, well, I wonder what happened to those guys. And there'll be a book that I'll never read. Right. And then, and that's annoying. And that is annoying because it's not self-contained. It doesn't have a definitive ending. Where like, look how Mandalorian season 3 ended. They were living on a farm somewhere. Like if you never went back to those characters, that's fine because at least I invested in that time. There's a beginning, middle, and end to those 3 seasons, even if the third one isn't the best. But it's still dealt with stuff. And then Ahsoka sets up so much crazy shit. And when was the last time we heard about a second season of that? And,
that is
unless you're going to pay that off in the movies and stuff like that.
No, second season of Ahsoka.
I'm sure it is. Oh, I'm sure it is. But I just haven't heard anything about it. But I'm just saying, like, I think in their minds, the Acolyte was going to be their, what Andor really is, their sort of premium quality drama. And it didn't quite get there. But sets up a lot of interesting things that I would certainly watch a second season of it based on the characters they left off with.
I'll tell you why I want to see this series continue is because with the appearance of Darth Plagueis, we know how the dominoes fall. And we know that Darth Plagueis must have had several apprentices along the way, just like Palpatine did. And Jason must have had to step away. Oh no, he's back. Palpatine had several apprentices. Darth Sidious did. We know this. We know he had 3 at least.
I didn't even know that. I didn't know that.
What? That Darth Sidious had 3? Did I say Sidious? Right? 3.
Oh, Sidious. I thought you meant Plagueis.
Paul, Dooku, and Anakin, Vader. So we know that Sith Lords roll through apprentices. And that seems only natural because the apprentice has the ambition of becoming the Sith Lord and has to kill the Sith Master to become that. So Chimere is in a position where I think it could set up a potential origin of Palpatine's story, an origin of Sidious, where a young Palpatine takes on a Chimere to gain the position of apprentice and wipes out Chimere and OSHA. But see that this is 100 years before the
Yeah, there's got to be
the
somebody in the
timeline
middle of
doesn't
that.
work. It just
Yeah.
doesn't work. So that's why, I mean, what do we know about these characters? May
Exactly. That's the fun part.
May
Like,
has been brainwashed, so she's just like, what's going to happen to her? Who cares? She's been brainwashed. She's a non.
has she been brainwashed, or was she found out the truth?
That was the other
like,
thing.
Memory.
Hold on.
Oh, sorry,
Since
the mind wipe.
Since you brought that up, it's implied in the show that she might help somehow Vernestra find her way to Chimera.
Yes.
If that's the case, what was the point of the memory wipe?
No,
If
see,
she's just going to end up being a
she was
help
going
anyway.
she was going to use her to lure them in, something like that.
Mm.
Because look, Vernestra is like not cool. She's already done a bunch of underhanded, devious shit.
Yeah.
She's not going to dangle this kid as a carrot. You know what I mean? To sort of go like this is the dumb version, right? This is what I always do in my day job, is sort of pitch to writers the dumb version, let them figure out the smart version, but the intention's right. So like the dumb version is, she takes May and puts her on trial for murder or some stupid thing publicly where she's going to be executed, or like she's going to be, locked up forever, and OSHA's going to see that and be like, on the Hollow News, be like, come on, handsome boyfriend, let's go rescue my sister.
Wasn't that cute? Wasn't that cute when they held hands over the lightsaber?
By the way, it was cool when it was cool when she turned the saber red. I thought that was awesome.
That is a leftover idea of George's. That was in the original script for episode 3. And they even made a toy of it. And then George realized that's lame. And then they abandoned it. And then the Acolyte picked it up like, hey, let's go with this. Let's let her Sith power turn her Kyber crystal into red. It doesn't have to be bled on or something like that.
No.
You bleed the stone dry. That's what she did. Yeah, I think that's
Your evilness makes the crystal bleed, and that's been kind of established in canon over the last 10 years or so.
Yeah.
But way after Revenge of the Sith, where maybe it would be hard to kind of figure that part out. Now I think we've been sort of schooled on that a little bit, so it makes sense in the format in which it was presented. But
in fact, there are still variant action figures of that Darth Vader Revenge of the Sith action figure with the red saber. No, I don't. I don't think I have any. Jim, did you get the Anakin with the red saber in the Revenge of the Sith packaging? And that was quickly changed to blue.
I don't know who's flicking a lighter. I let me guess. Is somebody flicking a lighter? What's that? I swear I keep hitting a flick.
It's me right here. I got it right.
Well, of course, there it is. The Zippo, the trusty Zippo.
Sorry, it was in front of me, and I was just doing
the
one
lighter
of those nervous
of a Jedi.
clicking.
You're notorious for that. With the pen, the pen.
Sometimes I broke myself with the pen and had to buy whole new pens. FJ, you don't realize this. I'm not allowed to have my ice machine
turned his
on.
Pen red.
I'm not allowed to have a click pen. I'm not. Mac keeps me in line. I can't have any.
He had a blue pen turned red.
I tried to think of the listener first. But okay, well, that was. We're going to get into this so much more with the after show, and that'll be coming next Monday. So we want everyone to join us on YouTube. Look for the posts. We'll be promoting it and everything. But Jason's on vacation. He's having a good old time.
Good
his
man.
Lighter and his
whiskey.
and the silhouette of Jason has been.
Yeah, really, I'm sorry, guys. I usually have much more of an eye for this type of detail, but really, when you only get like 6 days at the ocean, I'm like, if I'm going to be sitting here talking, I'm going to at least be able to have the ocean in my.
I love it.
Well, you certainly deserve it. You are the finest moderator of live conversation, and I'm looking forward to getting back together on Monday.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. And again, there's no weekly show this week for obvious reasons. So, because Jason's got the lighter and everything else going. So he's, but it was great. I was just glad we could get together and have these first blush reactions to the Acolyte after show.
We're just going to go back to the text chain after this. So
well, you guys will. I still have it. I've had it muted for 2.5 weeks, but well, it's a distraction.
I don't blame you.
In the middle of working on something, and all of a sudden I'll be like, "What?" And the next thing I know, I'm looking at my phone for half an hour. So I need to.
I'm checking it now just to see.
Half hour.
I'm checking now to see. All right, nothing from Kyle. The last text I have here is from FJ saying, "This is wild." So that's it.
And it was wild. I have to say, I like the episode a lot. I like FJ. I believe it's one of the finest of the season next to the
I agree with that.
episode 5. I like the way it was jumping around from locations. I like the way that things were wrapped up in what I felt like was a fulfilling way. So I'm looking forward to the after show where we can really dive into this. I'm going to rewatch the entire series. I'm going to binge the series, and just to get a grasp for how all of these storylines diverge and resolve. And
really would love to have a way to watch the whole series in a branching style, so I don't have to stop. I would really love to just sit there for whatever it is, 4 hours plus, and just watch all the events go one to another seamlessly.
Jason wants hands-free Acolyte. Damn it!
I do. Because I think it's gonna. I do think it's gonna help the show. I do.
If you could watch it.
By the way, I think time will be a little kind to the show. Not much kinder, but I think a little distance people will like. I'm not saying love it. I'm not saying it's the greatest thing ever. I'm just saying so they go, there were some things in here we didn't notice, after a little distance and things like that were set up and stuff like that. I think there's some stuff in there.
Absolutely. So the good final thoughts from FJ. And so that'll wrap it up. So be sure to join us. Keep in touch with RFR via all the socials, and keep an eye on rebelforceradio.com. And we'll let you know the time when we're going to go live next Monday. It's pretty much same time, right, Jason?
I think, we should be able to. Yeah,
I'm looking forward to it. So thank you everyone for listening. And as all, Jason, you do the sign offs. I don't do the sign off.
Oh, geez. All right. Well,
man, come on, step up. He's on vacation. I'm yelling at him to work.
Until next time, for Rebel Force Radio, I'm Jason.
I'm Jimmy Mack.
And remember,
the Force will be with you always.